With a special focus on biotechnology, digital economy, or digital health technologies, Startup Braga has become the cradle of technological giants. Since it was created in 2014, Startup Braga has also served as a magnet for hundreds of other companies across other verticals as well, such as nanotechnology and sustainability. Today's chat takes a rewind to moment zero with Tiago Gomes Sequeira, the transition from the leadership of Daniela Monteiro and Alexandre Mendes, and leaps into the future with the current director, Luís Rodrigues. What was and what will become of Startup Braga? Find out now with 10x Forward.
Hello, so glad to have you here back at Startup Braga. We have with us Tiago Sequeira, Daniela Monteiro, Alexandre Mendes, former directors of Startup Braga. Tiago, please tell us how this all began. Was it an urgent need, the creation of Startup Braga? Who were the ones who supported the idea from the very first day?
So Startup Braga was an aggregator of initiatives. Everything started in 2011-12. I have a co-working space, and me, Daniela, Alexandre, Inês, Rafael, and some other people that I can't remember the name of now. They were doing with me in Factory Braga, my co-working space, startup weekends, startup pirates, and other initiatives since 2011-2012. And then in 2014, Carlos Oliveira called me and said, "Look, we want to do something very similar of what you are doing, and we don't want to be a competitor of yours. Doesn't make any sense. Would you like to join us and work with us?" And that's it. That's how it started. It started as a place where we could have more resources, more space, because I didn't have the space in my co-working space. And this is the way it all started. So we had this idea of course, supporting early stage startups. How to do it was an open book. We had to think about it from the first day, and there was a clear idea that Carlos wanted to implement was we have to have big partners to start, and then do it in our local environment, but we need big brands. So that's why in the first stage, early days, we were in contact with Microsoft because the door was open for reasons that all of us know.
Yeah. How important, Tiago, it was by then to connect the existing initiatives like your co-working space and other stakeholders from the entrepreneurial ecosystem with the public policies in a new political cycle that was emerging by then?
We didn't have an end game on what we were doing. We were just, I would say, having fun and having a purpose, a role in the ecosystem. But we didn't have an end game. We didn't think, oh, well, let's do this and achieve that. It was. No, it was this. Things were lacking, and we were doing them because there was no place for people to gather, to work together, to meet investors, to help, having help from mentors, and that we were doing. But we didn't have a strategic focus on medical devices or medical technologies, nanotechnology. There was no funding for wider and more expensive sometimes initiatives that we needed to do, and so that was the main advantage of having this was let's stop, think about the future, and do something with a little bit more structure and with a strategic approach by connecting all the ecosystems in all the players in our ecosystem. That's why the University of Minho was integrated mainly with the medical school, INL, with a lot of initiatives that, of course, I think we're going to talk about them later. But that was our main purpose, is to connect the dots and have a strategic plan for the future.
Mm-hmm. Daniela, you were already in the boat by the very first day of Startup Braga, but how was the transition between Tiago and you, and when did that happen?
Yeah, I was already part of the ecosystem and working to shape this ecosystem together with Dan and many more people. We have to understand that back then we had this context where everyone was starting to create this tech ecosystem. So it was not happening only here in the north, but also in the south. And we were eager to have this community, this knowledge community, transforming knowledge into value and improving our economy in a very difficult economical environment that we had back then. So we were all very eager to bring these opportunities to our generation. So it was pretty much focused on creating this community. We lacked resources, but we were full of hopes and dreams, and we wanted to change the world one entrepreneur at a time. And so we were already organizing these initiatives to support the tech ecosystem. And it was quite natural for myself and people that were working with me at Startup Braga to join this movement that was very pragmatic, that had a lot of focus in results. And that's what we attracted us to Startup Braga. So when I mean us, I say Startup Braga, we were this initiative trying to change the world back then. So it was quite natural for us to join these movements. And then when the time came for Tiago to move to another opportunity in life, it was quite natural for me to join because I was already involved in the Startup Braga community. And then it happened very sense.
Before I pass the word to Alexandre, could you recall some funny stories by your time?
There are more funny stories than sad stories, but actually there are a lot of sad stories as well. So yeah, it was a quite challenging time, but we were doing it with so much, putting so much of ourselves into that I feel like this was life for us back then, and that's the funniest story of them all. This was us, you know, our identity, our the way we behaved was this. So funny stories. I don't know. I recall when I joined, people setting up the furniture that you find here in the hallways. All together, we named the bed that we had there after one of the entrepreneurs that set the bed up. So I don't know, all the breakfasts that we did here, the parties, all of that supported the creation of this community. All of that is it's fine.
How different, Alex, it is the existing community nowadays than the community that was emerging 10 years ago?
I think nowadays things are slightly more institutionalized in the sense that we have proper institutions and an ecosystem of different players in the space that are combining strategies all together. There's a national view or policy on how to build this, and local, more regional policies and strategies. And back then was 100% community and 100% organic, in the sense that we weren't super strategic on what we were trying to achieve. We had this huge passion and will to change things, because it's really important to notice and to remember that at the time most of our best talent was leaving the country. Many people were absolutely depressed with the reality around here. I believe that in Braga we had 30% of young graduates unemployed. So things were quite intense. And I usually say that in the end we were nothing but a bunch of fools trying to do things. We weren't that deliberate. With the inception of Startup Braga, things started to have a more structured approach, and clear goals and verticals. So that was very important to bring us up to the stage where we are at now. And fortunately, I think that things were also quite efficient around here, because we had very low resources to get things done. But that passion, will, and community, and also all sorts of leadership in space from our side, but also from the first founders that we brought in was super important to help us live where we are at nowadays with a community of, I don't know for sure, but a few hundreds of startups, a lot of money raised, definitely changing the landscape and putting the name of the city and in the ecosystem, and things were eventually successful. I think that things are now different, which is a great thing, and opening possibilities for a new future where Startup Braga will play a role, but perhaps additional players might pop and new conversations start too. What I think is more important is to make sure that in 2024 we are not having the same strategies, the same goals, and the same operations that we used to have in 2011.
Yeah. What were the main milestones that you found were critical across the path?
From my perception, I think that the first major milestone was to bring on board those strategic partners that was mentioned. Every single year we had to bring new people on board, and those big companies or big names in the industry or mentors that decided to join and play along us and share our vision or commitment was definitely, from my point of view, a very important step and also critical as a milestone. After then, I would say that the first acceleration program was quite an achievement because it was the first time that we had to put in practice what we were somewhat promising. Organizing the whole program, bringing those mentors here, having that specific batch of startups, and somewhat claiming that what we were telling to all the stakeholders was true in what came to this very simple premise that was, hey, this is worth it. We have very good founders around here. It's worth to create an incubation model, and it's possible to do it by combining people and making sure that we clear the way for these people to build their startups. Long story short, we can now celebrate the fact that we have some of the most promising startups in our community. And looking backwards, I'm not sure if that was not possible, if that would have happened if Startup Braga didn't started their operations at the time. So for sure, the first acceleration program is important. Afterwards, I would say that the consistency and criteria was key to Startup Braga, because at some point in time, we started having several acceleration programs, new players in the national ecosystem, more founders. And I think that's something that we consistently do well here, was to have criteria on what projects to support, how to do it, what was our approach, and that is remarkable from my point of view. And also, as we were growing and expanding our operations, bringing on board new partners was important. For instance, the university and INL, and all the programs that we did with INL were super important because it enabled this bigger scope in our operations, and it somewhat felt like proof of reality, proof of quality, in the sense that other institutions were acknowledging what we were doing. Having said that, I think that our DNA was also very important here, because I never felt that we lost that community building side. With all the events that Daniela was mentioning, like the parties, the meetups, the bringing people on board and being welcoming. So having this community building DNA and bringing people on board, I think is also a very remarkable achievement or milestone in the sense that it's very easy to lose that count. My final milestone perhaps would be surviving the pandemics and surviving the very good conditions in the labor market, because when we started, then again, we had a lot of unemployed people. In the last couple of years, you've been having a thriving job market where people can find very easily very good opportunities, and still being consistent on bringing new founders on board and making sure that these startups are growing. I think it's a very good milestone.
Alex was mentioning the first challenges of the first programs, etc. And I'd just like to add a few, I think, interesting topics. On the first days of Startup Braga, we had this building, which is a reconstruction of an old building, but not a perfect reconstruction. Who did it thought it was better to be not finished, a building that was supposed to be finished by people that used it. But this was a little bit challenging for some startups that were in other incubation places, projects outside of Braga, and to bring them here was in some cases a little bit difficult because they were mostly focused on the facilities. Do I have a big room? Do I have air condition? And we didn't have bigger rooms. We didn't have air condition. It was hot in the summer, cold in the winter, and for some of these guys, it was like. They didn't apply. They were convinced to come here by me going to meet them in their incubation places, going to events at University of Minho and other events, and to talk with them at the end of the events. Because on the first program, and we didn't do the first acceleration program. The first thing we did was to bring people to be incubated here, and then only then we did the acceleration program. Almost nobody applied, so nobody knew this was what this was happening. They didn't know what to expect, so they were comfortably sitting on their desks wherever they were and saying, "Why should I go there?" And for us, we had a great network, we had good names, but people didn't look at it as something valuable because they didn't have anyone to ask, how did it went? Did they deliver what they promised? So for all of them they were not really trusting that we could deliver what we were promising. So the first ones were almost grabbed by the necklace and come here. You need to be here, and everything's going to be okay. It's going to work out for you. And then the acceleration program, we used the startups that we had incubated here, and some that, of course, we reached out to investors sometimes, people that have done business stages, that done the first early stage investments, and told them that we could support the startups that they were funding by working closely with them in a program. And this is the way we built the first program. The next programs were much easier to attract people, to attract good startups, but in the early days was trying and to fish one by one each one of the startups that we wanted in the program.
If I may build up on this, it was easier to bring people time after time, but also the programs were more challenging to implement because at first the startup ecosystem didn't have the experience. So it was not only difficult to bring people to the programs because they didn't recognize the value of the program itself, but it was also because they didn't recognize the value of attending a program at all, because we didn't have much experience in our ecosystem in attending programs, and we didn't know what a mentoring program was, what an acceleration program was. We had to explain to people what that was supposed to be.
To mentors.
Yeah, even to mentors, we had to support them mentoring the startups. So at first it was, the programs would add immense value at first because people were not so demanding. They haven't seen much, so they could be so demanding. But time after time, with the offer in the market, then of course there was some hype, so a lot of programs started being offered to these companies. We had to raise our game and keep these programs interesting and And it's very interesting to see that Startup Braga still delivers programs all this time fast, because it means that it's still providing value. So.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely important to build up on this existing experience, because nowadays, obviously, it's much more easier to build up on an existing pool of mentors, on an existing pool of investors, on a community that have been growing since the last 10 years. So in each acceleration program or ideation or open innovation program, we have now several success stories and inspirational talks and paths to share. But I would say that it was really, really important that Startup Braga kept along these years this Startup Braga acceleration program like a flagship of our mission, of our vision, and in some way it was definitely one of the, I would say, most critical glue to connect all the ecosystem, to bring mentors into the board, to bring mentors on board, to keep the connection with alumni from previous exploration programs, from the incubation program. And in fact, we still do that kind of cross-sell between our incubation program and our acceleration program, and the other way around. I believe that in many ways, startups can benefit from an acceleration program, even after they have already been incubated at Startup Braga, and also the other way around. So I think that I would say that this consistency along this decade was very critical to keep the mission and the vision that all of you built in the very first years and during the following ones. So in some way, I would say that we had the privilege to benefit from all this heritage that you were building, all the community that you've built. I think it's pretty common to see corporate partners, VCs, mentors coming with such a great mood to our programs, and to be back every year to our acceleration program, or even to some specialized or vertical-oriented programs that we've been developed in more recent years, like high-tech tourism in the tourism sector, or the SCB Innovation Hub in sports tech field, or even in previous years, like the ones that you launched with INL, Startup Nano, like Fuel. So I think this all brought us to a very heterogeneous community and ecosystem that nowadays turns it much more easier.
I think overall, looking backwards, something that we can, or that we must acknowledge, is that part of Startup Braga's impact was huge in the city overall. Suddenly we started having a very strong brand, communicating natively to the outside, and positioning Braga as an ecosystem of innovation across borders. People were coming to Braga, getting to meet the city, meet the stakeholders, and understanding that it was possible to land here, create their startups. But at some point in time, it was even also important because it started to happen a sort of entanglement between the people that were moving in to start their startups, but also other companies that were looking to set their operations in Braga. So we are Artech Invest Braga, and working side by side with Invest Braga to help new companies to move to the city was also an important role that we had during my time at Startup Braga. So suddenly we had this very strong brand communicating innovation, talent attraction, possibilities, where all the other news across the country were about bad news and depression and a very ill ecosystem. And we were somewhat contrarian in that sense. communicating the future, communicating new topics and possibilities for what was ahead. And also that I'm actually very proud of what Startup Braga did was that we didn't point out to build what was simple. In fact, we started targeting, like Tiago was saying, some very hard verticals like nanotechnology and health. We were still starting to understand how that was possible, but we knew for sure that it would take time and that it would demand a learning curve that fortunately we did also, and some of the most positive results in what comes to startup creations comes from that side. So having targeted these very challenging verticals is something that I'm very proud, and it was interesting to see so many startups popping in topics that are still today very hard to build from Portugal, like Nuada was doing in the robotics or exoskeletons space, or Rubinanomet was doing with lipidomics. These are startups hard to build in whatever place or ecosystem you are talking about. And suddenly in Braga we started to open the door to that possibility. And I think that was pretty brave and also very important that we made sure to be integrative and specifically opening the doors to all the facilities, creating and developing technology in the academia and connecting the dots between the ecosystem.
In the early days, we started with medtech, nanotech, and digital technologies, where we put everything else. Nowadays, it's the same. What are you planning for the future?
Yeah, we kept those three verticals in our core vision, and we added the biotechnology and sustainability, also trying to address what we identified as I would say the main societal challenges. From the health side to the environmental challenges that we now face. Also trying to align with the strategic vision of the city, and also trying to connect this with some of the main R&D centers of the city and of the region. From the very early days, certainly the University of Minho and some of their main R&D centers like ICVS, the Academic Clinical Center, outside the university, the INL, they have all played a very critical role in the growing of this community, in the deal flow of new projects, new ideas coming from research groups, coming from academics, coming from entrepreneurs and recent graduates from the university. So also trying to look at the different faculties of the university, from the medical school, from the engineering school, in different fields of the engineering, from the materials to the biomedical to biological engineering. So we try to leverage as much as possible this critical mass, these core knowledge centers in the region, and to try to nurture our deal flow of new projects. So that's a reason why in the recent years we evolved for these 5 new verticals. Obviously in the field of digital and technologies, we can be talking about the tourism sector, like promoting an accelerator in partnership with Tourism de Portugal, like iTech Tourism, or in sports tech in a partnership with SC Braga, and we've been trying to grow the community and the ecosystem, trying to tackle new trends, new opportunities, and specifically oriented to some of the market needs and to some of the requests that we have also been receiving from some key partners. But yeah, I would say that nowadays we've been trying to address the main societal challenges with these I wouldn't say this reposition, but this adds on our mission, and probably we can be looking at the future also in what we can provide to the startups from what we've been not delivering such a relevant value proposition. For example, looking at the lack of laboratory facilities to laboratory validation, for example, we know that it is always a challenge for projects coming from medtech or nanotech or biotechnology. Looking at Startup Braga, the incubation facilities of Startup Braga only, in which we can only provide office working spaces. So looking at this new future, it is one of our main drivers and goals, to kind of launch this, I would say, Startup Braga 2.0 with a new building, with new facilities, providing these services and these opportunities not only for startups, but eventually to researchers in very early stages, or even to SMEs trying to validate some solutions in laboratory facilities, and trying to provide new solutions and transfer them to the market, and providing this environment for co-creation between different stakeholders.
But I think that in what comes to successful startups, we can do this joint brainstorm, but
Success, yes, as you were mentioning, you don't measure it only by the direct investment or the number of jobs that were created directly from companies that work here, right? So you measure it from all of that. And these companies that were here, most of them failed, and it's normal that they have failed. And the thing is that these people gain this maturity, so they are able to join other companies with other expertise and build new companies, and this is a cycle. So you don't build an ecosystem in not even 10 years, so you build it in decades. So if we are hoping to see these big results right now, we should align our expectations, but we cannot avoid mentioning a couple startups that have been part of this community, like Sword Health, PeakMed, Walker, and we can go on. Nutrium. Yeah, we can go on.
Or Imaginando, for instance.
Imaginando, yeah.
These results, this impact will still be measuring it in the years to come.
And also, I would like to stress the impact in the narrative, because we had a lot of spillover effects in the surrounding industries, because suddenly talking about innovation was possible. People would come to our events and try to figure out if there was something happening here, if we could help them in any way. But installing this local and national narrative on it's possible to sell overseas, it's possible to be ambitious, it's possible to leverage technology and build a new company, it's possible to spin off from a conservative business to a new startup. I think we can't undermine the impact of that, because from my point of view, it is likely one of our most significant impacts.
Startup Braga is now a community of more than 200 startups. They have already raised more than 435 million euros in venture capital. They have created more than 2,000 jobs. I totally agree with what you were saying, Daniela. Those metrics doesn't mean everything. We have to combine them with many other achievements. But from that time, from your time, what kind of skills would you say that was more recognizable in the entrepreneurs that would brought them to success? Looking now from some years and looking at those entrepreneurs on that time and where they are now, and you named some kind of success stories, and it is always unfair to name what success is and even to identify what are those success stories, but we are certainly made of people, of startups, of these stories, being them more successfully or not. What kind of names point out in your mind?
If I would have to start by a characteristic, it would be ingenuity. Like they had to be so innocent to start something like a startup and trying to build hard tech, because we had a lot of startups here that were really deep tech and they are not so easy to build. So Alexandre mentioned a few. So they had to be so innocent to believe that they could be able to do it, and many of them did. So, but if you ask them now, they will probably say, "I wouldn't start it right now." So that for me is the biggest characteristic. But right now they have a level of maturity that will be so impactful if they decide to do something else. And then there's these words that gained a lot of relevance during the pandemic, which is the resilience, of course. And so that would be the second, I believe, second characteristic.
Yeah. We had the opportunity to go back through different programs that we've built. I do believe that it's always incredibly easier to build on top of something. We had this opportunity to build on top of existing acceleration programs, incubation programs, training programs. For example, the School of CEOs, the Sharp training program for first-time CEOs that was not necessarily oriented to startups, but for entrepreneurs and to give them the proper skills to run their businesses. Looking at this community and to this ecosystem that we've been building through the last 10 years, what do you think, Tiago, should be the ambition for the next 10 years? Looking from the eyes of someone that still has this entrepreneurial mindset and that are still connected with the ecosystem.
If you look at the ecosystem now, I think you have a pool of talent much bigger than you had in the past. Either because Startup Braga has brought here teams working in Braga, or other big companies came to Braga because they saw there's a pool of talent here and they are setting up their offices here. So I would say that Startup Braga has this challenge, this balance between allowing these companies to come here, fostering the creation of startups. So how to achieve this, I think it's the big thing for the future is to keep attracting these big corporations or startups that create development branches here, because that's one of the main characteristics of the teams that come and set up their offices here, and the creation of startups. So not to steal the talent from these companies and feed this entrepreneurial ecosystem with new startups that possibly come from these companies that have relocated here. I think it's a big opportunity and a big challenge. It's a sign of a mature ecosystem that can now start companies with a little bit older people, because in the beginning I think the young of the entrepreneur, the age of the entrepreneurs was very low, and with time it was increasing smoothly, but it was increasing, and this experience is also important for them to be successful. So I would say this is the big challenge, to not kill the companies that move here, but to help them keep thriving in Braga, but at the same time being the providers of new companies, new startups that are created here.
Yeah, definitely. Daniela, what is in your opinion, the importance of this gray hair for the ecosystem? How does this might help our new or recent startups to thrive?
So we are quite good, or we became quite good in providing new talent to the ecosystem, but then we have the challenge of scaling up these companies. And that's when the gray hair becomes very important, and these past experiences are very important. Because you're not able to raise big amounts of money if you don't have that experience, that background, and if you cannot sell the vision to that vision of not only the vision but the ability to get there. And you can only do it with experience, and so it's not only about the money itself. So if we look into the vision for the future for our ecosystem and the Startup Braga specifically, I think that we still have to be providing talent to the ecosystem. So I feel like 10 years ago we were like, in 10 years time we will not need these early stage support because universities will be able to do it and the community itself will organize it. But I think that if we look at it now, we still need that early stage support of the early stage talents. So that's a very good place to be, to support these kinds of talent. But then it's also needed to bring this network to help the startups go to the next stage.
Alex, we did this path from a very initial promise of a specialized innovation ecosystem with the digital, the technologies, the medtech, the nanotech. It's curious because I think that it's just coming to my mind that during our conversation we didn't name so far AI. But what do you think are the main challenges, the trends, the emerging technologies that we must consider, that we must look at, and taking a look into our ecosystem? Where would you like to see Startup Braga and this innovation ecosystem in 10 years, for example?
I think that the world is substantially different nowadays than it was 10 years ago. If we look backwards, it's even hard to frame how the world was 10 years ago and how Braga was in what came to startups and entrepreneurship or freelance or remote work 10 years ago. We had a huge acceleration. My perspective is that 2024 will be a very challenging year, but a great opportunity to regroup and retarget for new and bold new steps for the future. I think that there are there's the convergence of several trends, like the maturity of certain technologies that were long-lasting promises that are now readier to be deployed. Also, perhaps there are certain shifts in how companies are being organized or markets are operating that will enable new founders to show up and to bring on board new capacities, such as exits, recently IPOs, some international experiences from many friends or people from the ecosystem that went abroad and worked in other companies combining that knowledge, but also failing startups and resetting and regrouping them again to start new startups again. So I think that 24 will be the section of a new cycle where this convergence brings a specific positive tension for players like Startup Braga.